I'm going to talk a bit about profitability in the context of pricing, financial hygiene, and data analytics. What I wanted to do before I give, so I'm just going to give a couple of suggestions, but before talking about my suggestions, I actually wanted to take a step back and look at what we mean when we talk about profitability. So hopefully it's stuff that people are already aware of, but I think it's always worth just thinking about what do we mean by profitability. So, when we simply put, a profitable firm is one that's making more money that it's spending in terms of its overheads. And I state that as a definition because it's actually possible to have massive income and yet not be profitable. When we're looking at profitability, there are a number of measures, but these are the key ones. So the first one would be PEP, or profit per equity partner. And this represents the annual profits of a law firm divided by the total number of equity partners. You also have utilization rates, which is really a measure of how much time a lawyer is spending on the work that's then billable to clients. And I'll talk a bit more about that in a second. But utilization is usually expressed as a percentage of, as it's usually expressed as a percentage, and then it's calculated by dividing a lawyer's billable hours by the total number of hours they work. And we see this as a measure of productivity. So really important distinction between that and the next one. Realization rates, which is a measure of how much time a lawyer is recording in comparison to how much fees are then collected at the end. And this is really a measure of performance or efficiency. So ultimately, we all want to be profitable firms. That's why we're here. It makes for a happier life. We can better serve our clients. We can better pay our staff. But there are a number of impediments to profitability. Now, the first one is probably going to be pretty obvious to you, but the second one might be less so. So the first one there is soaring overhead costs. The things that tend to strip away our profitability will be, physical infrastructure. They need to be in a building, either you've bought it or you've rented it. This usually means having decent offices in a well-regarded location, which aligns to your brand and is in close proximity to clients. Obviously, COVID has had a huge knock-on effect on that because so many of us are working from home. And I think quite an important and interesting discussion would be to understand what firms in Nigeria are going to be doing going forward. Is the view that you continue to work from home or that people head back to offices, or is there a blend? And as part of that, what effect would that have in the level of real estate investments that law firms are making in the physical infrastructure that they currently use? Because that's ultimately also going to affect profitability. The other thing is staff. Obviously, the need to hire, retain, look after great talent, which nowadays is not just about hiring good legal talent. I'm particularly pleased to see the different job titles that are popping up in different law firms, non-legal job titles, and I'm going to touch a bit on this in a minute, but these are people that need to be paid and looked after. And finally, technology, which everybody will know usually has a pretty large upfront cost. It's estimated that in total, law firms will spend between 45 to 50% on their overall overhead costs. So you can see immediately that even if you have massive income and then you're having to spend quite a lot on your overheads, that's going to impact on your profitability. But the second impediment, which might be less obvious to you, is the traditional law firm model. And this really actually is a big profit killer, because if you think about it, the profitability of a law firm traditionally is not driven by efficiency. The nature of the billable hour means that by definition, the longer something takes, the more you get paid. But that doesn't make you efficient. So if you're spending 3 hours on something that could have been done in one, you might be getting paid more, but that doesn't necessarily make you more efficient. The other thing is the individualistic nature of the work that we do. So the business of dispensing specialist legal advice is competitive. The more you know as an individual lawyer, the better positioned you are to make money. So again, that's not necessarily the most efficient way to operate, but that is the traditional model. And then finally, not only are lawyers encouraged to be good at what they do, but we're encouraged to always be right. So consequently, you have this natural born reticence in that we are not necessarily innovative. We're not necessarily open to experiment, because experimentation by its definition means trying and failing and then trying again until you get to the ultimate right answer. But for a lawyer, we are paid to be right. So, you know, that traditional model in many ways is a bit of an impediment. Right, so I've listed out a couple of what I hope will be useful suggestions. What I've done is I've kind of picked on 3 challenges, and there are many more. I mean, we'd probably need a whole day session to run through absolutely everything, but I've picked up on 3 that I see a lot working in this jurisdiction and broadly across Africa, because my business is Africa focused. So the first one is timekeeping. For your law firm, obviously the main form of revenue generation is client billing. Whether you're billing by the hour or on a contingency basis, or you're using some other method, it all comes down to the time factor. So timekeeping and time recording is critical. And for me, one of the best mitigations, one of the best things that a firm can do is to build that internal skill of truly understanding how your time is spent on various activities. So looking at utilization rates and realization rates, as I just defined on the first slide. And this relates both to chargeable and non-chargeable time. Think about it. If time is money and you don't understand how your time is being used, then how on earth can you assess or quantify your profitability? First of all, how do you know which employees, which lawyers within the firm are generating the most revenue? How do you work out which matters are consistently losing you money and therefore might be the things that you actually need to avoid? So it might seem like I'm stating the obvious, but having worked as a consultant in this environment for a period of time, I'm astounded by how many lawyers don't record time at all. And of those that do record time, many do not analyze the time that they have recorded. So they might have it on an Excel sheet and it might get looked at, you know, just to get an overall view, and maybe at appraisal time, you know, it will be sort of a clocking up of has this person collated this amount of hours. But there isn't necessarily that in-depth analysis around whether it's chargeable or non-chargeable time, you know, and how that factors into managing transactions. There are so many tools now that are easily accessible, many tools that exist for time recording, and a lot of these operate even on mobile devices. So I think, you know, this is a big thing that firms need to be thinking about, is time recording. And even in the absence of actually purchasing software, you know, just going back and being able to analyze your time in terms of looking at calendars, emails, phone logs, document management, just to understand who is billing what, where, why, and how. The second point on that slide is around financial hygiene. So, you know, closely tied to the first point, but it's not just about your overall understanding of time, but what are the metrics within your specific firm that are driving your profitability? Sometimes I think lawyers get so caught up in dispensing legal advice that they minimize the importance of understanding the management of a legal business. If you are a business owner, it's your job to understand how your business makes money. And it's your job to spend time looking at the numbers, whether you're, you know, a lover of financial matters or not. You need to get comfortable and familiar with understanding the metrics. And frankly, I have to say, I see far too many lawyers just go off and set up firms without really considering this important fact, the business of running a law firm. A good lawyer does not a good business person make. And I say that not to be, you know, insulting or derogatory to my colleagues. I'm a lawyer, so I can say that. I am running a business and I've had to learn just the importance of some of this stuff. It's why I'm a big believer in law firms involving non-lawyers in their senior management. And it's something that we're beginning to see, even in this market here in Nigeria. Here in the UK, there have been huge strides in the last 15 years to introduce what's called the ABS, or the Alternative Business Structure, which are regulated organizations that provide legal services, but they have the involvement of a non-lawyer, which means that it's not just having a lawyer sort of as your chief marketing officer or as your chief operating officer, and they're not just a senior manager, but they have a direct stake in the business in the same way that the other partners do. So, you know, I think that, you know, this is a really, really important thing to be considering. 3 points there just on some of the mitigation around financial hygiene. Pricing effectiveness, financial reporting, and expense management. And please tell me when I've run out of time, because I could talk all day. But the first one, just on pricing effectiveness. So this is really around understanding your firm's performance and discipline in terms of matter pricing, fee structures, gearing, transaction scoping, write downs, post-bill discounts. In essence, it's about taking time to examine your firm's realization of service value. So are you pricing to achieve fair value for the work that you do? And does that value hold until the end when the fees are collected? Because it's one thing to state a price up front, but actually, if you haven't properly scoped or managed that transaction, that fee may not be what you collect. And so that's the measure, that's the true measure. Hopefully some of you were able to attend the session that we had yesterday. I run a monthly program called LGC Pulse, which is a free program for African law firms, or for law firms across Africa, where we give marketing insights. We invite somebody, a bit like what David was just suggesting about sort of inviting other people to interview. So we do that as a business. We invite people, I interview them, and they share best practice on marketing. And so yesterday we had a session on having better pricing conversations. And so one of the important points that came up was about getting to the point in your law firm cycle where clients are not simply comparing your price with that of your competitors, but they're comparing your price with what's at stake if they don't use you. In other words, they might look at someone else and think, actually, that firm is cheaper from an initial pricing perspective. But when they look at the end game, there is so much that they will lose if they don't use you, perhaps because you've got internal, previous knowledge of the client or the sector, or just based on the relationship. So really important to think about pricing effectiveness and value preservation. The other point there is about AFAs, or alternative fee arrangements, something that I'm really, really passionate about, something that I'm doing a lot of work on at the moment. But broadly defined, this is any legal fee arrangement that isn't tied to the traditional hourly rate. So, I've made the point around efficiency and the fact that our traditional law firm models aren't necessarily based on efficiency. And it's a topic that, as a practice, we're beginning to advise much more on. Again, one of the points that was raised yesterday was about the need for law firms not just to respond when clients are asking about AFAs, but to proactively push them. And that involves understanding them. So, hopefully some of you know what I'm talking about when I talk about alternative fee arrangements. But for some of you, that might be a concept that you're not familiar with. But there are a broad spectrum of pricing models that have nothing to do with the hourly rate. You have things like, from the sort of baby type of AFAs, like blended rates or capped fees, all the way up to the more grown-up, if you like, AFAs like virtual banks, collared fees, contingency fees, etc., etc. And as I say, this is something that I'm super keen on doing lots of work on. So if people want to speak to me about it afterwards, please do get in touch. The other thing on there is financial reporting and financial signaling. So there's an adage that goes, time kills cash. In other words, the longer it takes you to turn your bills into actual money, the less likely it is that you will get that money. Many firms, again, just based on my own observations, are not focused enough on their collectible fees. And therefore, they're just not achieving that compressed cash conversion, i.e. that compressed amount of time between billing and collection. And often this is because they just don't have the financial rigor or the discipline around internal reporting. So having alerts for when your inventory is getting really huge, or where there are work in progress spikes, or where there is notable leakage, just understanding where losses are being made, or even things as simple as delayed invoice processing. So another suggestion there is just to, be on top of your financial reporting. And then the last one, just on expense management. So I read an interesting article a couple of weeks ago about the fact that many law firms in Africa do not automate their disbursement recovery, which means that not only are they regularly failing to recover costs or expenses from clients, But fee earners are spending so much time filling in manually expense requests, and that's consuming time, because actually that time could be better utilized for unbillable work. So I'm not advocating that people necessarily go out and buy, some expensive software, but I do think there is some real value in investing in disbursement management and recovery software so that lawyers can engage in better cost recording, and just so that certain processes can be automated. For me, this is a really quick win that will translate directly into profits. And it's estimated that just automating those systems can improve your recovery by about 40%. Just my final point there, and I hope I've not gone on too long, but just data analytics. Through the work that I do as a business owner and as a consultant to law firms across Africa, I've learned that in the context of data, people really do not know what they don't know. In other words, many lawyers and law firms don't know the value of the data that they currently possess. It amazes me that each time I start working with a law firm, and maybe I'll do a simple audit on their website or their social media, and it transpires that they have never bothered to find out who's visiting these platforms. Or they'll organize a webinar like this, and they've never actually analyzed who showed up, the contacts on the list. Or maybe maybe they've put them on MailChimp or some other electronic platform, but they've never really done much with that data. In this day and age, data is gold. And if you're not engaged in the business of analyzing the data that you possess, then you are leaving money on the table every single day. For me, there are so many things that you can easily do to understand your data. Last year at the beginning of the lockdown, we created a checklist, a free checklist for law firms, just to say, look, now that you have this additional time where people are not spending 4 hours commuting from Ikeja to VI, why not invest this time analyzing the data that you have? And so we went through a list of things that every law firm can have a look at just to understand what data they have and to start to make use of it. So there's so much more that I would love to say, but I've probably gone on long enough. Those are some of the points that I just wanted to raise, and just to suggest some of the quick wins that people might want to start thinking about in terms of best practice. I've just got that slide up there in case people want to connect with us. We are a company that is supporting marketing, and therefore we are marketing ourselves. So we are all over social media. We give away a lot of free resource, a lot of free information. I'm very, very passionate about ensuring that law firms in Africa are playing at the same level, if not above, their international counterparts. That's precisely the reason that I left my very comfortable job in central London to do the work that I do. So please do utilize the resources that are available. And that's it from me. Thank you.